Hello everyone, welcome to Gary Mack Studio. This image that you see up there now, this is of a canal that I got two brothers, one young, both of them are younger than I'm the oldest, but every year the three of us get together and we go do something together for a few days or a week. And this image you see here is the place we stayed at in Corpus Christi. Actually, it's on the it's on the the northern tip of Padre Island, and right where the canal comes in and separates it from Mustang Island, down where Port Aransas is. Anyway, I was going to paint this picture, and I did a voiceover because I'm not real good at painting and talking at the same time. I got two left feet when it comes to that. So we're going to get right into this, and let's just see how this turns out. It's a kind of a nocturne, and it it was late evening, and the sun was just going down, and there was still a glow in the sky. And you saw this image right here. I've already got the sky painted in, and then I've got some of those buildings sketched in where they're going to go. And these are acrylics. I normally always paint with acrylics. I do paint with oils, but I prefer acrylics. To me, it's just easier than it is with oil. So I got you up on the tripod now, and there's my easel, and I made this little board right here that I could adjust the angle on it up and down to where it's vertical, or I can lay it almost flat. And I've got it tilted at an angle there that's easy to it's easy to work on. And I made it myself, and it just hangs on. It just hangs on my wall easel. So so I've started blocking in these buildings, and I kind of skipped through some of that to kind of shorten the video a little bit, but you guys can get the idea. And I've got this sped up to 4 times the speed, and so we'll just kind of go from here, and I'll block in all these buildings, and then we'll start on that canal and all those lights and those reflections. My brothers, we go down there to go fishing, and this particular place here had its own dock, and whenever we come in from fishing out in the bay there, we when we got back to the condo and had supper and everything, we go down to that dock and fish off of it at night because it's all lit up down in there, and we caught some pretty nice flounder off of that dock, and a couple of redfish. But that was a lot of fun. You could just set up a lawn chair on that dock and just sit back and just relax. Boy, and it's so quiet, and there's no noise around there. It's just a beautiful place, and we got it on one of those Airbnb things, and it wasn't that expensive. It was like $140 a night, and that's not bad for 3 people. It was a two bedroom, and but it was comfortable. Kitchen, the whole works, and we went up and down the whole area. We spent quite a bit of time down at Port Aransas, down in the beaches down in Port Aransas, and And it's so beautiful down there, especially in the early in the mornings when the sun's coming up. Boy, there are just some beautiful sunrises, and I painted a few of those sunrises, and maybe I'll post them on here. Here's one of the paintings that I did of the early morning sunrise. It's just beautiful. It's unbelievable. Uh, to let you see how beautiful those sunrises are. And the beaches, you can drive for miles and miles and miles. The beaches up and down there from Mustang Island. Down. Gosh, you can drive for hundreds of miles down the beach. It's just beautiful, and it's so much fun. And you get down in there on that Padre ways. You get on down in there, and those beaches are secluded. There's no one on them, and there's no housing or anything down in there. And it's a good idea to go on it with a 4-wheel drive or a golf cart of some kind of off-road vehicle. And around the Port Aransas area, you can rent a golf cart and just you can drive them around town down there. They don't mind. It's legal. They won't stop you, and you can just go anywhere in a golf cart down there at Port Aransas. And you get on that beach, and you can just go for miles and miles and miles and miles, and it's so much fun, so beautiful. And then right in Port Aransas proper the beaches there's quite a few people there, but it's not just really that crowded. And it's got 2 jetties that run out that is really good fishing. We fished off of those jetties there several times. And the sea turtles were really thick, so you kind of had to watch those and not get those on your hook. You're trying not to. And we never did catch one, but we seen a couple of guys that hook those sea turtles, and that was kind of sad. But because whenever they grab the thing, they usually swallow it, so they're pretty much doomed when they do that. But it's just a beautiful place. So I'm gonna be quiet, and we'll talk about how I'm gonna paint this. There's not gonna be on this particular painting. There's not gonna be much atmosphere at all. I might put a little bit back in that vanishing point back in there, and but most of it's just going to be clear, and it's hard to get a painting where everything is good and sharp and without any atmosphere, and or it's hard for me. Some people don't have any problems with it, but I have to work at it. And some things I'm fairly good at, and some things I'm not so good at. And this kind of a painting right here, I have to really work at it. I have to take my time, and boy, I'm an impatient kind of guy. And usually, when I paint a picture, especially a landscape, rarely will I spend over 4 hours on one. Even if it's a larger painting, even like a 30 by 40. A 30 by 40, I hardly ever spend over 6 hours on one that big. And then these smaller ones, I'll spend an hour and a half. But this one, this painting here, I'll probably have 8 hours in it, because I have to being real precise like that to get all these buildings and everything in perspective and get all those sharp corners and stuff. It's not something you can just dab some paint on there like you would on a landscape. Uh, it's strategic. You have to plan it out uh, and then execute. And I am really nervous. The older I get, the more shaky my hand. Especially after I drink a cup of coffee or something. That caffeine, boy, my whole hand it'll just go in riggers, and I can hold that brush, and that's one thing I think that it helps my landscapes is I can hold my brush up there, and I can just hold my arm up there, and that shaky will actually actually does pretty good on putting foliage on trees and stuff, because it just shakes around. I don't have to move much; it just happens automatically. And but on this painting, it's not exactly like the photograph image, but it's close. You can get the idea. And when I was younger, I used to go down to the coast a lot, down the Texas coast. I live up in the Dallas and Fort Worth area, and to Galveston, it's about a 5-hour drive, and then down to Corpus, you're looking at about 8 hours, 9 hours to get to Corpus. And one time, my brother and I, the youngest brother, we were offshore fishing. We went out, and I don't know, we was out about, I don't know, 15 miles or 20 miles offshore. And there was a hurricane that had come up toward the Houston area. And we were watching the weather close, and we were okay down there. We wouldn't, not to get any storms, so we decided to go ahead and go on out by the weather report. So we got out there, and it was just a beautiful day. There was the light winds, and all the waves were about 1.5 feet, maybe. It was just almost a calm day and almost glass-like. And we were fishing around an oil rig and wasn't paying any attention to what was going on. And I looked around and I said, Ken, what in the world is that? And way over in the horizon, it looked like mountains back in there. And I told Ken, I said, man, that must be clouds coming up, because it was just a clear day. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. And they kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And all of a sudden, we decided those are swells, those are waves coming at us. And what it was that surf coming off of that hurricane up by Houston. And man, I cranked up the boat, and I said, man, we got to head for this nearest platform. We were probably 2 or 3 miles from that platform, and you can't go real fast out there when it starts getting choppy. So we headed for that platform in case that boat was to capsize or something. We'd have a place to crawl up on that. We could crawl up on that platform. And those big old swells got closer and closer, and those things, I'm not kidding you, were 25 foot at least, those swells. And we were like, okay, here we go, bye-bye, we're fixing to drown. But they wasn't breaking over, they were just big old round smooth swells. They were just smooth. So we started heading into shore, and we'd get on the back side of that, and you could just surf down them like with a surfboard. And then when you give it gas and you'd go up the side of the next swell, we'd go up, and then when you get to the top, you just free fall down over the top, down into the into the bottom of those swells as and we rode those. It was so much fun. Actually, we had fun out. We played around out there with those things for a long time. And when we headed into shore, those swells were hitting the beach, and we listened to the radio, and there was like 5 or 6 boats had swamped right there at the ship channel where you go into port. And so we hung offshore and was watching to see, and there ain't no way, because our little old boat, it didn't stand a chance, because it was just sloshing up and down. They just and when those waves would slosh like that, they would just plume at the top like a palm tree. It would just splash up. So I told Ken, I said, well, we'll just ride one of these waves and just ride it right up on the beach, because there ain't no way we can go into that between those jetties into the ship channel. So we decided we were gonna just run the boat up on the beach, just get on one of those swells and just ride it right on in. But we got to watching those swells, and you could predict how they were gonna act. I told Ken, I said, Ken, I think we can make it around there. We can dodge those. We can go around those swells like that. So we thought, well, we'll chance it. We took off, and sure enough, when you could predict when one of them was going to slosh up, and you just go around it and go around the next one, and right on up into the ship channel, and we made it. And actually, that was pretty stupid to do that, because there was, like I said, there was 5 or 6 boats that just flipped over, capsized out there when one of those swells had raised up like that. It just flipped the boat over, and gosh, that was scary. And another time, we was offshore, and we was about 15 miles offshore, in my brother's boat. He had like a 24-footer. It was an inboard. And we were out fishing. It was getting late in the evening, and it was time to head back in. So we started back in, and all of a sudden the engine started getting hot. So we killed it. And what had happened is the fan belt had broke going to the water pump in the generator. And so I looked at my brother. I said, because we always carried spare parts like that. We always carried spare fan belts and all kinds of stuff, spark plugs and wires and anything we might need out there in an emergency. And I asked him, I said, where's your fan belt? He said, well, that's it. So, man, we were stranded out there, and the currents were real bad. The currents were probably 3 knots in an hour. You could drift 4 or 5 miles from where you started at. And gosh, we started drifting on down south, and it got darker and darker, and you could start seeing the lights from Corpus out there and offshore. So. No, actually, this was at San Luis Pass, down by Galveston, was when we did this. Anyway, we had to figure out something, so I had some cotton rope, and I tied them together to make a belt, and made a belt to run the water pump. And so I made several of them, because I knew they wouldn't last very long, and we couldn't run the boat very fast with that belt like that, and we could only go oh, like maybe 5 miles an hour. So we headed in and belted brake, and I'd put a new one on, and we'd go and go, and finally we made it into shore. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning, so it took us about 6 or 7 hours to go that 15 miles because we'd started in about 5 o'clock, and even it running, even it running, it'd take almost an hour to get out there at 20 miles because you can't go real fast, and 24-footer like that, you just can't go fast. So we made it in, and at least the Coast Guard didn't have to come looking for us, which that's usually bad news when they got to come looking for you. Anyway, back to this painting. Right here, I'm trying to get those lights. Those lights are under the water. And then right here, I'm trying to get these reflections from these buildings and trying to get this to look like water. But those green lights that you see on there, they're under the water and they're shining up. And I don't know how in the world I'm going to get those to look like that. But all I can do is try. And they didn't turn out too bad. You'll see at the end of this what I did. And then right here, there was a shed right there. And these people had their own little boat slip where they could pull their boat up in there and lift. And they had a lift there where they could lift the boat out of the water. And I'm going to paint that boat here in a minute. And I'm working on those lights. It's down in the water. It was really hard to get those things to look like it's glowing under the water. And I don't know. We'll just have to see how this goes with those things. And right here, I'm just getting some of these reflections from these buildings and the lights and everything. And getting some of that glow from down on the water. And on this little concrete curb there, that I decided to make it just a little bit wider. It was a little bit skinny, so it looks better after I widened it up some. Looks more. So what I'm doing right here is I'm putting a glaze over that building to warm it up a little bit with a kind of a goldish color instead of that bright yellow. One of these days I'll learn to keep my hands out of the way, maybe. I don't think about that camera when I'm doing this. I think about what I'm doing on the canvas. Just a little bit of this orange color on there. And then back in here, some of that warm color. Back in some of these areas. And then there were green lights. There were green lights all around in this area. These lights right in here these were underwater lights, and they were green. I'm gonna try and get those in there to look like underwater green lights. Which that might be harder than it is said. So there's a boat right underneath this awning right here. And I'm going to That is the top of this awning right here. I put some white paint, and then when that dries, I'll come back and I'll take a dry brush with some green paint on it, and brighten that up. So right here, I started putting the boat in, and they had their own boat dock right there where they could just pull their boat in, and there's a lift on that awning. And then I didn't notice it, and it was kind of hard to see in the photograph, but right in front of that boat there to the left, that was a dock, and they had chairs and tables and stuff sitting around on that dock. And so I had to come back and alter that a little bit and start painting in tables and chairs and what have you around on that dock, just an indication of. And then up in this fence, there were some vines over in that yard that were spilling over on the outside of that fence. So I was trying to get those in, and trying to get all the detail as I can to get it as close to the image as possible, because this is kind of a memoir of my two brothers. We just have fun together whenever we get together and go fishing and do this stuff and just have a good time. Just relax and no pressure, no. Don't have to think about anything except what we're going to do the next day. And we all go to bed early. I'm usually in it by 8 o'clock or so, but we usually get up early and we'll have a bite to eat and then go fishing. And this place was just beautiful, just quiet, easy to access, and we're just about maybe a half a mile from the beach out in the Gulf side there, and these canals like this one here, they connected to the bay. And of course, the tide comes in and out, and the levels go up and down. But it's just a beautiful place. And fishing off of that dock right there, we fished off of that dock and caught flounder and some redfish, and just put up a lawn chair on that and just sit and relax. And really, there's no one around. We didn't see hardly anyone around that. We were there for, I don't know, 4 days, something like that, 4 or 5 days, a week. I don't remember exactly how long we were there. It was about a week. And we just didn't see anyone. And those lines look like they're angled and not straight, but actually the canvas is tilted back, which making them look like they're not straight. But it's the end of this, and it'll be coming up here in just a minute. I'll put a photograph up of the finished image, and it turned out pretty good. I was satisfied with it, and I don't know if anybody watching is watching this for a tutorial, but if you are, this one is kind of complex for me. This is not my usual kind of kind of painting because normally I'm a landscape artist. But I do seascapes and I do cityscapes, but they're usually not this detailed. But I wanted to capture as much detail in this as possible because, like I say, this is a memoir of my brothers. My intent is not to sell this painting, but to hang on to it, to just enjoy it as a reminder, because we are getting older. I'm 77, and my next youngest brother, he's 70. Let's see, he's 74, 5. He's 4 years younger than me. And then we have a younger brother that's like 15 years younger than I am. And he lives here close to me. And then Ray, the middle brother, he lives down in Houston. And we're getting older, and our memory's getting short, and our bodies are not what they used to be. It's everything becomes a hassle anymore, and actually it's really hard to get motivated to do any of these kind of things anymore. Used to, I'd go to fishing 3-4 times a week just around the house, and I used to go down to the Gulf a couple of times a month, and we had our own boat. We'd go offshore, but I hadn't been fishing locally here in freshwater. I hadn't been. It's been 3 or 4 years. In fact, about 4 or 5 years ago, I sold my boat because it sat out in the backyard there for like 3 years. So I just sold it, and I sold the RV. It sat out there for like 4 years, and it was just dilapidating, beginning to rot. So I sold it while it was still in pretty good shape. And that desire to go like I used to, it just faded away. And so what I enjoy doing now is what you're seeing right here. I just enjoy, I love what I'm doing. It's a lot of fun, and I don't have to physically have to work at it. The mental aspect of it is kind of challenging sometimes, because when things don't go exactly like I want them to on these paintings, it gets frustrating. But that's part of it. That's part of the fun of it. I love it, and I'll do it until I die. And it's just a fun thing. And I like to teach. I love to teach of what I know, and I've gotten reports on people who've watched my videos tell me how much they learned just by watching me, and that's my goal is to people to adhere to what I've learned. And I've been painting for a long, long time, and I've gone through a whole lot of trial and errors, what works and what doesn't work, and I've gotten to where I can paint a decent painting pretty fast. As I said earlier, I'll if I spend more than 2 hours on a painting, that's a long time for me. Unless it's a big painting. Now, I've got one up on the wall. Anybody that's been following me has seen that picture of those elk. That's a big painting. It's 6 foot wide and 4 foot tall. And I've painted on it for a couple of months, off and on. And I don't know. I was keeping a record of how many hours that I actually worked on that. I kept a ledger. Let me see if I can find it here. I kept a ledger of that somewhere. Of how many hours I had. Here it is. And this is not all of them. So 47, 58, 59, 60. I got about 70 hours in it, and for me, that's an eternity. Like I say, my paintings usually don't last about 3 or 4 hours at the most. 8 hours, 8 hours would be a really long time for me. And some of the bigger paintings that I've done, they've taken 8 hours or longer, but I try and stick to 3 or 4 hours because my mind, if I don't know, my mind works a little different. I've got to get it done. I've got to get things done. Hurry, 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 go, go, go. I'm in a hurry, and I don't know why. Like the country song. I'm in a hurry, and I don't know why. That's me. That's me to the T. Is I'm in a hurry. Everything I do, I hurry. And when it goes slow, I get frustrated. Even driving a car, if something goes slow, I get frustrated. Or if I'm standing in line at a grocery store, I get frustrated. So it's go, go, go. But I've always been that way. I used to have my own cabinet shop. I had my own cabinet company, custom cabinet. And working in the shop, I didn't walk from back to front to back of the shop. I ran. And I would run and just jump over the cabinets and go and go and go and go. 10 hours a day, hard. But that's always been me. And now that I'm old, I want things to go fast, but they don't go fast. They go slow at a turtle's pace, and I get frustrated when I can't do it. It takes me 10 hours now to do what I used to do in 1 hour, and that's the truth. I'm not exaggerating either. Weed eating the yard, mowing the yard, taking care of business around the house, and I have to break off from these videos, these paintings, and take care of things around the house, and I don't want to. When I was young, man, I could get out there and get it done and still have half a day to come in here and do what I want to do, but not anymore. Even with a riding lawnmower, it takes away from this, and it's just frustrating to me. Okay, back to this painting here. It's coming along. I'm getting some of these glazes in, and on these lights right here, I'm going to put a little atmosphere around those lights where they look like they're glowing. I'll let that dry just a little bit, and then I'll take a dry brush with a little bit of paint on them, and put an atmosphere around those lights. And then back in there's lights in up and down people's steps in there. All up and down there. There were just lights everywhere, and it was so pretty. The whole place was lit up. You didn't need any sunshine right in there now, because there were so many lights that it was just lit up almost like daytime. And the condo we stayed at was right there, right to the right of that that's the last light up in front there to the right, and that dock was ours, or was ours to use. It was a little private dock. And up in the trees, I'm getting a little highlights in there where the lights are kind of shining up on the right-hand side of those trees. Got the palm trees in the back there. The silhouette from the glow of the city behind it back there. Glow in the skies from the lights of Corpus. Because it was dark. I mean, it was dark outside. But over in that... looking toward the west there, the lights from the city just glowed. It was just so pretty. Just a beautiful night. And there was no mosquitoes. Usually down in there, the mosquitoes are notorious for sucking your blood out of you and making you itch. But on this particular trip, there was virtually no mosquitoes. That's really rare for down there. And those salt mosquitoes, and those old salt mosquitoes, boy, they're tough. They hurt too. In fact, they'll swell me up. I'll get a bump on me like a ant bite. We got fire ants here. I don't know where you guys are from, but man, we got the fire ants. You don't want them on you. And there's a lot of them down around that coast area. In fact, sometimes the cattle ranchers around there, the fire ants would get so bad that there was even reports of those things actually killing the cattle. There's so many of them. So I can't imagine that many of them on a guy to kill him, but I can imagine if he did have enough of them, it would, because just a few of them on me, when one of those things stings me and bites me, it'll be on me for over a week to 10 days and just itch like crazy and burn. It feels like a burn, feels like it's burnt. Okay, right here is where I'm trying to get some of that fuzzy atmospheric glow around these lights. Trying to get them to look a little more realistic. And it's just a fun thing. Okay, guys, I'm through. And here's my finished photograph of it. And it didn't turn out that bad. I'm pretty proud of it. So we'll catch you guys on the next one. Be sure and subscribe to Gary Mac Studio and hit the likes button, and I sure would appreciate it. And I'll catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.